boy Captain Hunter coming at you again. I got a real quick video for you. I want to try to get back to this. I was on vacation and just doing a bunch of stuff, just kind of enjoying the summertime, but now it's fall and trying to get back to it. It's just got to get back to it. So here we go. We're going to get back into it, and we're going to talk about another story that's coming up. We're going to talk about the case that's going on down in Philadelphia. Not really a case, but what happened in Philadelphia, which was kind of big, and that is from the Philadelphia Inquirer here. We can see that Philly has become the first big city to ban minor traffic stops said to criminalize driving while black. In other words, here's what was going on down in Philadelphia and going on in many major cities across the country. Police officers see a person maybe with a broken taillight or something along those lines. So what they wanted to do was the police officers believe that they're up to no good and therefore pull the person over and then find some reason to detain and search that person's vehicle for an extended period of time. This is the allegations that many civil rights groups have been complaining about. And so Philadelphia, and sure, in the wake of George Floyd and other protests, have taken a look at what's going on, and their numbers said, this practice has to stop. So this is what we hear about when we talk about pretext stops. Pretext stops, by definition, means that the officer sees some type of problem, not really a motor vehicle infraction, right? They didn't run a stop sign, they didn't or do some other motor vehicle violation that is moving, but maybe they did. But they're looking for a reason. The officer is looking for a reason in order to detain and or search that person's vehicle. Philadelphia says, hey, listen, no more of that. And so here's what they said. If and when an officer sees a broken tail light or something that's really minor in scope, that the officer is not going to pull them over, can't stop them, but they're going to mail a ticket through the mail. We'll see how long that goes on for, or how that comes about, right? Because if my cousin is driving my car, who's got to pay for this minor vehicle infraction that comes in the mail? Whatever, right? So all that's going to be worked out, whether I got to pay it because I own the car, or my cousin got to pay because he was driving the car, or whatever. Or do they have the correct registration and all that is on file? I would imagine they have to run people's registration to make sure that the current location of the car, current owner of the car's registered, who is it registered to, make sure everything's up to date and valid. And that was always the purpose of the stop. Right? If you see someone doing something along these lines, police officer would stop you, make sure the car is current, driving the car, that the legal right to drive, make sure. But now Philadelphia says we don't want it anymore. No. Here's where the rub comes in, and here's where we really got to be careful about balancing public safety versus just not overstepping the bounds and necessarily targeting and harassing African Americans, right? Because the statistics are in across the board, across the country, that many times when these types of stops, whether it's New York City, whether it's Philadelphia, these types of stops have gone on, that they are targeting African American citizens. And in Philadelphia's case, as the article goes on to demonstrate, is that even though they stopped and detained, I think it was like 72% of the time that all these types of pretextual stops were occurring, that even when they found weapons and or drugs, it was less than 1% of the time. So a city that's about 45% black, they target and stop 72% of the drivers. 72% of the drivers who were stopped because of these pretextual stops. And of that 72% who were stopped and detained, only 1% of the time they were able to find drugs and or weapons. So that shows a certain clear disparity of what's going on. If the officers did believe there was a hunch, or did have a hunch about something, they were clearly wrong and clearly off in that. Can find the drugs or weapons 1% of the time. So this is good. So where do we balance public safety, and where do we balance where do we balance public safety versus freedoms? And so this is going to be a good question, a good test to go on. How do we make sure the people are driving the car who's supposed to be driving it? Somebody gets into an accident, we got to make sure the people are following the rules where they live at, who's supposed to be driving the car, do they have warrants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this has to be worked out. It's going to be very interesting to see what's going on. The two people on the city council who dissented, because this is a city decision, So here we can see, let's just read a little bit of this. In so doing, Philadelphia became the first U.S. large city to ban the use of so-called pretext or stop for low-level infractions, a practice that police departments have not only permitted but encouraged. There's a link here, so you can go onto that. For years, they've been able to potentially search cars of drivers they suspected of carrying illegal drugs or weapons. Instead, critics say it has led to motorists being unfairly stopped and searched for what is known as driving while black. The new law is likely to have a significant impact on the nature of policing in Philadelphia. About 97% of the police vehicle stops are for low-level violations, according to the Defender Association. Eliminating these could lead to as many as 300,000 fewer police encounters projected. So yeah, so we look at Sandra Bland, we look at Dwante Wright and Walter Scott, who was the young man in Minnesota. Orlando Castile, another one was stopped a number of times. But here's where I get these numbers from. In Philadelphia, black drivers accounted for 72% of those stopped for vehicle code violations by police officers during 1 year in the period in 2019. Despite African Americans making up 43% of the city population, when these stops resulted in searches, police found illegal drugs and guns less than 1% of the time, with black drivers 34% less likely than white drivers to be caught with it. Items, councilman said. So here we have it. So it's going to be very, very interesting. They talked about leaked memos about police administrators telling these officers to go out there and do your job, but make sure that you don't violate certain agreements because they don't want anything with the Bailey agreement. So listen, this is really big news. I'm wondering to see how it's going to work out when those tickets start coming in. Are people going to pay? They're not going to pay. Are they going to not get be able to get their cars registered? They have to take time off from work to pay these fines. How is all that going to work out? It's going to be very interesting to see how all this works out. But is this a step in the right direction? Let me hear your thoughts and your opinion. What do you think? You think that more cities and towns take measures like this where they can't stop you for having a license plate out or seeing any small infraction? Maybe people aren't wearing seat belts or some other infraction, that these things just come in the mail, and who should have to pay them? So let me hear your thoughts, your opinions. Let me know what you think, and I'll hit you with some more videos. And police reform is more than just a trending topic. My name is Lawrence Hunter. I'm a retired police captain from the state of Connecticut, and I've written a new book called Police Reform. And I talk about the evolution of law enforcement here in America and what changes need to be made in order to improve the relationship between the police and the communities that they serve. Over the past few months, it has become increasingly more important and more evident that there's something amiss and awry between the police and the communities that they serve. So whether you're about defunding the police or defending the police, if you're about Blue Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter, no matter what side of the fence you happen to sit on, make sure that you pick up your copy of Police Reform today.